Okay.
Welcome, Wargamers. This is Doug with 2 Plus Stuff, and today we are doing a quick book review of something I just finished reading and I have absolutely fallen in love with. I mentioned it during the first episode of While You're Reforging, which is our podcast equivalent here, and that book is Nagash, the Undying King. Now, on While You're Reforging, I did incorrectly say that it had just come out in response to the Malign Portent release. Someone actually corrected me and said that it came out in 2016. And that is absolutely true. It actually did. I think the reason I thought it was is because they started re-advertising it for, like, kind of building up to the Malign thing. So when I saw the advertisement, clicked it, and downloaded it, I thought that it had just come out. So, total honest mistake. But yeah, this game came out in 2016. I don't know how it fell under my radar. Absolutely my favorite AOS book to date. And I'm not even a Death player. The basic premise of the story, before I kind of go into my thoughts on it, is that there is a Nurgle invasion coming into the Realm of Death. It is largely believed that Nagash has been full-on totally killed by Archaon during the last time they had an interaction. This would be during the beginnings of the Age of Chaos. The Nurgle army approaches basically an area that's covered with several hundred of tribes of people, and one of those tribes is led by our main character named Tamra. Tamra does her best to help people escape, and is helped along by Neferata, who, the famous Mortarch, and is really an incredible character throughout the story. Tamra leads her people to a massive tower where basically the goal of the story, you learn, is that Neferata is using them as a defense. Turns out the Chaos Warband figured out that Nagash isn't actually 100% dead, but if they go and tackle his mortal body and break it apart and destroy him, they'll basically kind of finish the job that Archaon started. So they find out that there are certain gates that lead to Nagash's personal sanctuary. And so they're kind of in the realm, came through a realm gate, and now they're headed directly towards one of those gates. Neferata and actually Archon the Black are tasked to defend this. And so to do that, they go around all the various tribes and people groups, gather them together and trying to mount a defense to give Nagash as much time as he needs to kind of heal and recuperate. Ideally, of course, to break the Nurgle army, but it's so huge that kind of defense is really the prime objective. The clans and tribes all gather in one massive fortification that's long been abandoned. And we'll go into why here in a little bit. But they kind of do a one last stand to fight against the forces of Nurgle, which are ultimately, in the end, Nagash has enough time to kind of heal up, power up, and repel them, reasserting himself as a major player in the mortal realms and basically letting Chaos know, hey, I'm not dead, and don't come into my kingdom. Tamra, for her skill and use of magics and things like that, is inducted as a Death Lord. And the story ends with her wondering if everything that it costs to become what she is was worth it, and looking at the people that she's lost along the way, kind of questioning her decisions. There's a lot of moral choices in this book that are phenomenal. So that's really the overarching story. Okay, what Josh Reynolds, the writer of this book, did so perfectly was give us little threads that we had never have gotten before when it comes to Realm of Death. For example, one of the reasons I love the book City of Secrets is it's very old worldy, meaning we have concrete characters in a concrete place, very ordinary folks, some mix of races, but generally speaking, we know that this is what average life looks like. Well, here it is. She is a human, just a basic human living kind of a tribal state. We learn over the course of the story that the reason that there are hundreds of tribes here is that it wasn't always that way. This massive fortification they do their last stand in used to be the pinnacle of society in the Realm of Death. They had several kings who at one time kind of got together after this huge civilization, kind of a Tower of Babel type moment, where they got together and said, man, aren't we so great? We don't even need Nagash. And so they revolted against Nagash as a kingdom. Nagash comes in, absolutely obliterates them. He takes all their armies, the broken kings, and seals them away in the furthest depths of hell. They're not allowed to die. They're just allowed to sit there, rot, and watch everything that they've built be turned to ash. Destroys the kingdoms, shatters the empire, and now there's hundreds, I think they said there was 600 tribes, individual clans that formed because of this shattering. And that's just backstory that we get. And I love that because that's so much interplay between Nagash and average people we don't normally see, right? We don't have a book where Sigmar comes down and just hangs out with free people, but we do have one where Nagash directly interacts with humanity. So that's why we have all these tribes. Now, interesting about these tribes is we're talking about normal everyday life. Tamra's tribe, the one that we kind of follow the most in the beginning, they have a very interesting relationship to death magic. People who can do it are highly revered in their society, almost like shaman, I would say, from other primitive cultures. And what I love is that when someone in their tribe dies, they don't really go away. For example, Tamra's brother had died, but he still talks to her in the beginning of the story, because when they die, they bring them back as skeleton warriors. However, skeleton warriors in this universe still have full consciousness, meaning her brother was her brother. Ceremonially, they wait for the flesh to kind of pass away, let disease and rot kind of go away, and when they raise up, it's just bones. The reason being is they don't want to see the horrific zombie changes. It's more about having that person back in spirit, and so they do that by having the skeleton there. I think this put a really interesting kind of duality to kind of, like the Nurgle things, right? Those guys die and turn into like plague zombie type things all the time. But these guys have a great reverence for death, and so kind of letting that skin peel away and kind of, let the disease and the decay happen. But after that, you can come back to society and be a skeleton guy. But yes, they are completely sentient. Her brother does everything he can to defend her and make sure she gets out of the first town that they meet the character in when the Nurgle warband initially attacks. Neferata sweeps in, says, Tamra, you're going to be a part of my defense. We're going to break these guys and avenge your family. Of course, all signs are kind of pointing to like Neferata's not telling you the whole truth. Of course she's not. But convinces Tamra, who now has nothing to lose, take your survivors, head to the giant fortress. We'll meet you there. So Tamra and all her survivors do just that. They go to the fortress, and we'll put a pin in that, right? Let's focus on this Nurgle warband. So I have never read a book where I've had so much character from so many different types of chaos followers. But it's, you have your Blight Kings. They have a leader of the Blight Kings. I can't remember what the name of it is, but they have like a knightly order. It's very honor-based. And they perceive the realm of death as being a sad, morose place because they don't relish in life. They lament its end. Of course, with Nurgle, there doesn't have to be an end. There's just more and more life. So their perception is their honor-bound duty to share the joy of Nurgle and good news and kind of proselytize with the realm of death. There are at least 3 occasions in the book where they invite people, join us. Don't make me kill you. I don't want to kill you. Join me, right? It's very invitational, and I love that feel that Nurgle gets, and it's really unique to him. Now, of course, this Nurgle warband comes in, destroys Tamra's village, and they kind of pause there, kind of recoup their forces and reorganize, choose a direction to go. They're kind of haphazardly moving through the realm, trying to figure out where this gate to Nagash's personal chamber is. So they're kind of a little bit behind the main character, chasing them down. While they're being chased, Nagash, who is in his slumber but is constantly being reminded by Archon the Black, hey, wake up, someone's here and they're coming for you, I need you to do something. Nagash is kind of groggy and his mind's kind of shambling and things like that, but he's trying to put together a defense as best he can. His defenses, even when he is not all there coherently, are incredible. So basically, the path for this warband to go from where they start off, or in Tamra's village where we meet them, to the gate by the fortress that Nagash is in, is the most depressing travel ever, because every single day they take a step. At night they're getting hit by spirit hosts that are just coming out of nowhere and like sawing them in half. Normal weapons don't work. Only some of the champions have demon-bound weapons that are doing anything to them. At one point, Nagash raises up a bunch of zombie ogres that he just had like stashed in case of a rainy day. And the ogres come barreling out and just like, they're all they're like tundra frozen and there's like frostbite and chunks of them missing. So like zombie ogres are smashing things to bits. He raises 2 skeleton giants that just lay some serious waste. I mean, like every single night, insanity is happening to these guys, and every single day, because the army is so massive, you don't want to split it up and have it fall apart. So whenever one of these things happens, they have to wait a day, recoup, reorganize. Who's here? Okay, let's go. So he really does a great job of giving the various tribes plenty of time to kind of mount a really surmountable defense. This actually accounts for much of the book. While the main character, Tamra, is at the location kind of learning to kind of assert herself as a leader and become the person she wants to be, this Nurgle warband's having a hell of a time travel there. So that's kind of where we stay the most of the book, is not the battle, but in Tamra kind of asserting herself as leader, and this Nurgle warband trying to get there to destroy them. Now, I say that and it sounds kind of lame, but the battles that happen with the Nurgle warband, as well as the dialogue that we get between these various Nurgle leaders, this is one of the most characterful books I've ever read in the Age of Sigmar. The Nurgle warband, let's just kind of do half and half here. They are led by a few people. They have various leaders, but they have a demon, a herald of Nurgle named Gurm, and he is incredibly characterful. I mentioned this in the Scarbrand lore review, where demons are much more stable in this environment than ever before, like in this universe now. So he doesn't need to be near a Rumgate or a Warp Rift, none of that. He's just a completely stable character, independent thought. He's much more of a, I guess with the new Nurgle book coming out, we would say he's closer to being the Scrivener than the Bilepiper, in terms of he's very strict. I need to get this done. We need to get there. We need to do these things. Not so much the joyous side of Nurgle. And there are also 2 Blight King characters who I don't think they developed nearly enough, but they definitely serve the purpose of being a good kind of counterweight to Gurm, meaning like they're not like him, but they just represent the more lighthearted and honorable aspects of Nurgle, honor and quote there. So they played off each other very, very well. And over on the defense side, like I said, it might sound kind of boring to have the hero sit around and trying to mount a defense of a tower most of the book, but the dialogue, I can't stress enough, the triumph of this book is the dialogue. This is one of the first times we get to see Arcan the Black really, really talk in Age of Sigmar. Neferata as well. The 2 of them are the star characters for me. Seeing them interact with one another, it was top notch. Whereas Arcan is extremely to the point. No, this needs to happen. This is how it's going to go. Very analytical almost. Neferata is the sweet talker, the manipulator, and they play off each other very, very well. My favorite scene in the book is actually all the tribesmen are there trying to argue about what we should do, and there's no coherency amongst them. They're all just kind of scattered patches of refugees. And Neferata lands and basically says, no, here's what's going to happen. You're going to work for me, and we're going to mount a defense, and this is where we're going to stand, and if we die, this is where we're going to die. And kind of pitches it as an offer, and they reject her, saying, no, we'll just keep running, it's fine. And then Arcan walks up behind him, and he's like, if you refuse here, you have to deal with me. You say things like, you're going to cross the sea and run away. You have never figured out that I stand between you and the sea, meaning he just kind of made a very subtle threat, like, I'm not going to let you leave. This is not a negotiable thing. And it was just, you have to read it for yourself. It is one of the best scenes of dialogue that I've ever read in Age of Sigmar. Just like, yeah, dude, you tell them. Very, very enjoyable. And in the mix of that, both of them see something in Tamra, right? There's not only the raw magic, she is a much more adept death mage than just about any other tribes people, but she also simultaneously holds her religious reverence for Nagash, because remember, these people all worship him. I mean, he's their deity of their realm, while also kind of balancing that with the practical reality of like, I need to defend the people that I care about. So many of the other clan leaders are quick to ignore Nagash or say he's dead or he's not coming from us, blah, blah, blah. But she is the one who's like, no, I'm going to keep my faith, but I also have this like very real, raw material thing that I have responsibilities I have to take care of. Now, after several delays and all the fighting at night and things like that, the Nurgle warband does actually come up and get to the gates of the fortress. And at this point, I'm going to stop because there are some things at the end of this book that are spoilers. Okay, and I'm just going to straight up say that. They are awesome, but they are spoilers, and so if you don't want the ending spoiled, stop here. What I will end you with at this point is saying that this is one of the most incredible Age of Sigmar books ever. I love the dialogue, the storyline. We get to see normal people doing what they do, and you should totally read it. For those of you who want the spoilers, basically the Nurgle guys pretty heftily take the fortress. I mean, the bloatflies, I think they're called, whatever they are, the flying guys of demons of Nurgle, are able to shatter entire walls with some weapons that they kind of gained along the way. And Neferata is surprised. She wanted this kind of long siege to happen, so Nagash had plenty of time. She was hoping for days. It was done within hours. Death mages are trying to resurrect people. They have about 1,000 skeletons fighting with them and things like that. It's just not enough. The numbers are so huge on the Nurgle side. We're introduced to a pack of Blood Knights who work for Neferata directly, They go in there, mess some stuff up, but even like there's just so many that they withdraw and fall back to their queen. Once the gates start falling, things kind of come apart rather quickly. Tamara is sent kind of running. She hides in a shipwreck. Something I forgot to mention earlier is this castle is right next to a sea, and the gate to Nagash is actually underneath that sea, which is frozen on top. So they have to go in there and get underwater to get to the gate. And there, guys. But Tamara runs and she hides kind of in the wreckage of a boat. And while she's in there, a few things happen that I neglected to mention earlier. One is Flesh Eater courts make an appearance in this book, where while the good guys were trying to like come up with a defense, Neferata and Tamara had gone there and recruited the help of one of the Flesh Eater court kingdoms. And so they're kind of in the scrap and they're doing really, really cool stuff, but it's just not enough. Simultaneously, throughout the entire book, the kings that I had mentioned, the broken kings who had said they don't need Nagash, they have been calling out with all their might for Tamara to release them from their bondage that Nagash put him in. And so she actually does that. With that being done, this huge death army comes out of basically the bottom of the sea, rushes up and obliterates a good chunk of the Nurgle army. Not enough to stop them completely, but it's a huge moment. It's kind of like in Lord of the Rings when all the dead guys come out of the boats. They don't necessarily turn the tide of the battle, but in this story, I mean, but it's enough to like kind of throw the army off kilter. Nagash, who, like I said, this entire story, his mind is broken. He's kind of wandering from place to place, observing things, but not necessarily interacting a whole lot. When someone breaks his command, meaning he locked those people away and Tamara unlocked it, something about that triggers him and he is livid. And so that anger, that insult to his honor and his word is enough to kind of make him focus for a while. So he has the single coolest thing ever. Basically, underneath the sea, there's a bunch of dead bodies, okay? From when the kingdom was collapsed and Nagash kind of destroyed them all. He scoops them up and compiles them and makes himself like a undead golem body. Like I said, his body's broken further away, so he creates this like artificial temporary body and is like Mechagodzilla, but with 1,000 dead bodies as kind of the stuff just kind of mashed together, and just utterly decimates what's going on the ground. With that, the tide is utterly turned between the Flesh Eater courts, the remnants of the survivors of the good guys, the broken kings and their army, and Nagash just being like an absolute monster in combat, smashing through things. It is one of the coolest scenes in a book I've ever read. With that, they're able to finally break the back of this army. The Nurgle army, I mean, the invading force, is utterly broken. When the battle is over, Nagash is looking to see who broke his will, right? Who broke the rules of Nagash? Who did this? And Neferata and Archon both point to Tamara and say, she did it, but please, I'm begging you, please spare her. And Nagash makes a choice. He decides to be merciful. He says, okay, I'll spare you, Death Lord. And at that time, he basically sucks and destroys all the people she was trying to save, and instantly turns them all into basically skeleton warriors. And she realizes the punishment for her crimes. She has been spared and she's been given a job. You're now a Death Lord with Nagash's army, but you've lost the thing that you were trying to do, and that is protect people. And so it paints a very distinct moral question. Did she do the right thing? Did she not? I mean, they're still alive-ish. They still have their will, and they all bow to her because she's kind of their liege. They're still them, just like her brother was still himself as a skeleton warrior, but they've lost that life that they were fighting for. And so you kind of have to pitch this moral question. What is Nagash's punishment? Is it fair? What does mercy look like? What is life and death? Is this really a punishment if they're not dead? There's like a million questions that go through your mind as you kind of evaluate the morality of what just happened, and I absolutely love that. Overall, this was an incredible book. I can't really put my finger on it, but there's just so many little scenes that everyone who has a Death Army or even a Nurgle army will want to read. And the reason being, the little tiny character interactions during battles and dialogue with the Nurgle warbands between the demon and the other Blight Kings. You get the sense that even though they're on the same team, these are not comparable creatures. They might have a similar goal, but they're just the demons and the human mortal aspect, I should say, are so vastly different. You feel that in this book, and I absolutely love it. In addition, the bits that we get with the Flesh Eater courts are top notch. They treat themselves just like they do in the Battle Tome, where they act like they're a very knightly order and they just have duel and respect for each other, and they see themselves as holding weapons and simultaneously described as horrific monsters. Throughout the battle, they kind of catch glimpses of themselves, like in water, or they see their friend kind of go savage and hog wild. They'll see them as they really are, kind of flicker in and out. So they get the sense, and the king at the end of it says, "I believe that I am mad, my queen," thinking, he's talking to our main character Tamra, and of course he's kind of drooling and scribbling and making all sorts of weird sounds. But in his mind, he's very eloquently saying, "I think I'm losing my mind." Those kinds of things are just awesome. They're so stinking cool. The scene with Nagash at the end, top notch, can't rank it enough. The dialogue, like I said earlier, between Neferata and Archon and how they interact with people around them, absolutely stellar. If you love those models and it looks like they're going to play a prominent part with the Nagash Battle Tome coming out soon, you're going to want to read this. What I also loved, and I'll kind of end on this note, is not just the literal events that happen to the dialogue in the book. Every chapter starts off with a little epistle, almost like a poem almost, or what we would call like a scripture from like the Bible type thing, but it's of a religious text called the Epistle of Bone, which we're never really talked about. No one ever talks about like, oh, this is my book, the Epistle of Bone, but they're all like psalms and chants and prayers to Nagash. There is a strong sense of identity with every single aspect of the Realm of Death with Nagash. It's said dozens of times in this book, all are Nagash. Nagash is all. That their identity as a people, as a culture, as an army, as a geographical location, he permeates this entire realm. Nothing happens without his knowing it, but also his energy imbues it back to them. So it's a very strong identity concept, and that's something I harp on quite a bit on this channel, and I think it's incredibly important. Overall, this book is absolutely incredible, and actually not very expensive. If you have it, go ahead, download it, read it, and tell me your thoughts. I'd love to hear it. If there is a particular book that you'd like to have heard, go ahead, click subscribe, leave it in the comments down below. I'm not in the nature of doing book reviews in general. This one was just so timely and so powerful that I just really wanted to share it with you. And so I hope you enjoy it. If you think of any books that you think are stand out in your mind as being top notch, please let me know. I'd love to read them. But above all, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I look forward to talking to you next time in my next lore and or Star Collecting Box review. Thank you so much for watching, and happy wargaming.